just to reiterate that rivalry that the Flames were stoked in once again last year is still alive and well. Keanu Tanuvasa was talking to media yesterday. Standout defensive lineman, was in the conversation to enter the NFL draft, chose not to enter the NFL draft. He chose to transfer, to defect from from Utah, to go down the road to play at BYU. Now, he said the fact of the matter was it wasn't about the NIL. It was more about football than anything. But he also said that over the summer, over the past few weeks, months or so, he went to a teammate's wedding. He said this on a radio interview, ESPN 700. And he said basically it was hard. He went to a former teammate's wedding now from Utah. And he said a lot of guys, I'm paraphrasing now, but he said it was tough. He made it sound like it was awkward. And that he said guys were, quote, still bitter at him for leaving and going to BYU. Now, after that interview, and we know college football, the fan bases are rabid, right? And that's why we love it. But the Utah fan base caught wind of that and really kind of went after him on social media, to the point where I was standing right in front of him yesterday, and he had to, I guess, back off that a little bit. And here was the comment that he made to all of us when we were kind of hanging around him at some of those breakout sessions. He said, I would say, this is a quote, I would say I misspoke, or at least I misconstrued in the way that I meant it. I just tried to say in my time at Utah, I felt there were areas that I dedicated myself and had given my all to the university at the time. And I guess it was wrong because it maybe sounded like I was comparing it with other people. I especially wasn't comparing it to people. Kalani Sitake actually spoke up, and he urged fans to try to see where Keanu Tanuvasa was coming from. And I thought that was pretty cool. You know, nothing like seeing a coach get their players back, especially a new player. This is nothing more to me than, well, first of all, it is more, because Keanu Tanuvasa talked about how, and I have the quote here, he faced the social media criticism from fans about his decision to leave Utah, but also says he emotionally broke down for weeks after transferring from Utah to BYU. So he said he sacrificed, and he doesn't want to sound prideful, but he really sacrificed a lot more than some guys were willing to. This is what he was talking about, his teammates at Utah, and that relates to the quote that I just read. But bad blood between BYU and Utah, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon. More on BYU. By the way, the Utes are going to be in the house today in Frisco, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure Kyle Whittingham will diffuse any of that if he's asked it, but maybe some of the Utah players might comment on that. I'm sure they'll be asked about it, so we'll keep you abreast of what's happening there. So for BYU, I was there, guys, on the ground floor yesterday. So you can say you know more than me, or message boards or what have you. Look, there is still like a mystery around Jake Retzlaff. And talking to, so I don't want to say who I was talking to, but just talking to a couple of really prominent writers yesterday, they were still talking about like the thread of mystery that weaves through the Jake Retzlaff story right now, and like where he's going to be next year. Obviously, a suspension would exist if you were to stay at BYU. I'm not saying that he's going to stay at BYU, but there's nothing that has happened officially as far as him actually leaving the program and going to play football somewhere else, right, outside of word of mouth. And there is also the possibility that his teammates are in the dark. L.J. Martin said yesterday, he also was asked about the honor code, and I'll talk about that in a second, but L.J. Martin was asked yesterday, what is the status of Jake Retzlaff? Have you been told that he is still with the team? So this is 24 hours, less than 24 hours ago. So, I love BYU fans, but please don't tell me that you know more than I do. I was sat right there, okay? You may have inklings, but I got evidence. LJ Martin spoke yesterday and said, I haven't heard anything from him about it, so I'm leaving it up to him. That was as to whether or not Jake Retzlaff was going to be or still was on the team. I was sort of surprised by that. I was taken back a little. I thought, man, I thought this was a little more official. And then, of course, now we look at when you get down logistically, again, having conversations with people who know more than me yesterday, I had read this, but it would appear that BYU has to get involved in order to allow Jake Retzlaff to play football this year. So if I were to, now we're into speculation, which is another word for guessing, but if I had to guess, I would say that right now they're in the logistical process where BYU would do what they needed to do to release Jake to play this year. Because if certain standards aren't met logistically, he would have to sit out all this year because you can't just transfer and hop right in and play because the transfer portal window closed on April 25th. So, again, the BYU-Utah rivalry alive and well, still a little drama swirling around BYU. The good news for the Cougars is, and I mentioned this off the top of the show, the infrastructure of that team, all the way down from the coaching staff, they're in pretty good shape. That's going to be a really good football team. And I think even if you lose Jake Retzlaff, again, talking to people yesterday, nobody's blown away by his skill set as a quarterback. We're blown away by his skill set and his abilities as a leader, but you have to imagine after the breaking of the honor code, right? Is that leadership skill set still going to be intact at BYU? I mean, it wouldn't be. And I'm not saying he's going to go back there and play. I'm just saying, like, there's still a cloud of mystery around this. Like when I used to be in the news business, we would start off news stories and say, police have more questions than answers this morning. I feel like that's where we're at with where Jake Retzlaff's future lies. And one more thing on the Retzlaff piece. LJ Martin was asked about yesterday about the honor code. And he said, look, and he was a straight shooter. He said, I'm not a member of the church, but I'm a Christian. And he said, so as a Christian, it's easy for me to adhere to said honor code, right? And he basically made it sound like, and again, if I were to interpret, he wasn't necessarily, I think these guys are kind of bummed at what happened with Jake Retzlaff. And I think they're kind of, I don't want to say bitter and get into like all kinds of pointed stuff, but I think that they are disappointed in their teammate. And they're disappointed with the state of affairs right now heading into the season. Now, I think they will get over that, right? I think they'll move past it. But the fact of the matter is, like, there's a lot of changes, right, emotionally and on the football field. So BYU obviously has its work cut out for it. Now, one team that there's a ton of excitement around,